Maya Brooks never expected that a normal Tuesday afternoon would pull her straight back into the past she'd spent years trying to bury. Her life had become predictable. Work, coffee, a quiet apartment, and the comfort of routines that asked for nothing more than her presence. She was 33 now, living in Seattle, a marketing manager at a small design firm. To most people, she looked composed and content. But beneath that calm exterior, there lived an ache she never talked about, the kind that stayed even when you thought you'd moved on. That afternoon, the office hummed with the soft chatter of coworkers and the tapping of keyboards. Maya sat at her desk, finalizing a presentation. Outside, the gray sky threatened rain, and she found comfort in its familiar stillness. Her phone buzzed on the table, lighting up with a name she hadn't seen in 8 years, Ethan Carter. The sight of it froze her completely. Her chest tightened, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. For a second, she thought it might be a mistake. Maybe a different Ethan. Maybe a prank. But the number was the same. The same. One she used to call without thinking. Back when love felt easy and forever seemed certain. Her heart pounded as she stared at the screen. A dozen questions raced through her mind. Why now? What could he possibly want after all this time? And did she even want to hear it? But before she could decide, the call ended. She let out a shaky breath, half relieved, half disappointed. A minute later, the phone buzzed again, this time a text. "Hey, Maya, it's Ethan. I know it's been forever, but I'd really like to talk, if you'll let me." She read it over and over, her pulse quickening. Memories flooded her. Laughter by the lake, long drives, quiet evenings when they thought love alone was enough. But just as quickly, the memory of the night he left returned too. No explanations, no closure, just silence. For years, she had tried to forget. She had dated, worked hard, filled her time with noise so she wouldn't have to feel the hollow space he'd left behind. And now, with one message, all that calm cracked. Her coworker Jenna passed by and noticed her frozen expression. "You okay, Maya?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just an old message." "From someone important?" Maya hesitated. "Someone who used to be." When she got home that evening, the apartment felt quieter than usual. The city lights outside her window blurred through light rain, and the hum of traffic echoed faintly in the distance. She made tea, sat by the window, and reread his text. She could ignore it. She could pretend it never came. But she knew herself. She wouldn't sleep until she knew why he'd reached out. Her fingers hovered over her phone for a long moment before she finally typed back. "It has been a long time. What do you want to talk about?" His reply came quickly. "I'm in town for a few days. Would you meet me? Tomorrow, maybe? I'd like to see you." Maya stared at the message, her heart thudding in her chest. Meeting him, face to face, felt dangerous. Not because of him, but because of what it might bring back. Still, part of her needed to know, needed answers. "Where?" she asked. "Willow Lake," he replied. "Same place." She stared at the words, her breath catching. Willow Lake. Their place. The spot where they had spent countless summer afternoons, and the place where everything had ended one stormy night 8 years ago. For a moment, she almost typed no, but her hand stopped. Something deeper, curiosity, maybe unfinished emotion, whispered otherwise. "Okay," she finally sent. Tomorrow, that night, sleep refused to come. She lay in bed, the sound of rain against the window pulling her back into old memories she had worked so hard to forget. She remembered the warmth of his hand in hers, the way he used to laugh when she rolled her eyes, the promises they never kept. She remembered how it all fell apart, how he'd left after a fight that neither of them really wanted, how his silence afterward hurt more than anything he'd said. She had loved him deeply once, the kind of love that makes you believe in forever. But forever had turned out to be shorter than she thought. By morning, her emotions had settled into something calmer, cautious but curious. She dressed simply, tying her hair back, avoiding anything that looked like she'd put in too much effort. This wasn't about nostalgia, she told herself. It was about closure, maybe even forgiveness. Still, as she drove toward Willow Lake, she couldn't stop her hands from trembling slightly on the steering wheel. The drive was long, and familiar roads brought back flashes of old memories. The diner they used to stop at for coffee. The small bookshop where he once bought her a poetry collection she still kept on her shelf. Every landmark whispered his name like the past refused to let go. When the lake finally came into view, her heart tightened. It looked the same. Calm, silver blue under a cloudy sky, the willow trees bending gracefully by the shore. For a moment, she almost turned the car around. But then she saw him. Ethan stood near the water, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, looking out over the lake. He looked older, broader shoulders, faint lines near his eyes, but still unmistakably him. The man she had once known like the back of her hand. He turned as she approached, a small, uncertain smile tugging at his lips. "You came." Maya stopped a few feet away, her expression guarded. "You didn't exactly give me time to say no." He let out a quiet chuckle. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," she said honestly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them carried years of unsaid words. Then he said softly, "You look good, Maya." She gave a faint smile. "You too." They stood there in silence, the only sound the gentle ripple of water against the shore. It felt strange, standing across from someone who had once been her whole world. Finally, she spoke. "So, why now, Ethan? Why after all these years?" He took a deep breath, his gaze lowering to the ground. "Because there are things I should have said a long time ago, things I should have explained." Her heartbeat quickened. "Like why you disappeared without a word." He met her eyes, regret written all over his face. "Exactly that." Maya folded her arms, trying to hold her emotions steady. "You don't get to just show up after 8 years and act like it's nothing." "I know," he said softly. "But please, just hear me out. After that, if you never want to see me again, I'll understand." She hesitated. His voice was calm, steady, and different, like a man who had carried something heavy for a long time. Against her better judgment, she nodded. "All right. I'll listen." Ethan's shoulders eased with relief. "Thank you." For a few minutes, they just walked along the lake shore in silence. The wind brushed past them, carrying faint echoes of laughter from the past. The air felt thick with memory and something unspoken. Maya didn't know what he wanted to tell her, or why it felt so important. But she could sense it. Whatever he had to say wasn't simple. It wasn't small talk or nostalgia. And as he turned to her with that same quiet seriousness in his eyes, she knew this meeting would change something inside her. Because when Ethan Carter finally spoke, what he said wasn't just from the past. It was something that would stay between them forever. Maya stood beside Ethan, the cool breeze brushing her face as ripples spread across Willow Lake. It had been years since she'd seen him, yet the air between them still carried the weight of something unfinished. Ethan's silence felt deliberate, as if he was searching for the right words. Not to impress, but to confess. Finally he spoke, his voice low and steady. "When I left, it wasn't because I wanted to, Maya. It was because I had to." Her chest tightened. "That's not an explanation, Ethan. You could have called. You could have written something. Anything." "I know," he said quickly, regret flickering in his eyes. "And I've replayed that moment more times than I can count. but I thought staying away was the only way to keep you from getting hurt." She frowned, confused. "Keep me from getting hurt?" "You broke me, Ethan. I waited for you for months. I thought something happened to you. And then... nothing." He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening as he looked out over the water. "My dad got sick," he said finally. "Really sick. The doctors didn't think he'd make it. I flew to Oregon the night we fought. I planned to call, to tell you, but things got worse so fast. And then..." He paused, swallowing hard. "He passed away 3 weeks later. I stayed to take care of my mom. I thought I'd come back when things settled, but every time I tried, it felt like too much time had passed. Like I didn't deserve to walk back into your life after disappearing." The words hung between them, heavy and quiet. Maya's expression softened, but the ache in her chest remained. "You could have told me, Ethan," she said gently. "I would have understood." He turned to her, eyes full of regret. "I was young, stupid, and proud. I didn't want you to see me breaking down. I thought disappearing would make it easier. For both of us." She let out a faint laugh, though it lacked any real humor. "You really thought silence was easier than honesty?" He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "At the time, yes. Now, I know it was the biggest mistake of my life." For a long moment, neither spoke. The lake shimmered in the afternoon light, and birds circled lazily above the trees. It was strange how calm everything looked, considering how loud her heart felt inside her chest. Ethan's voice softened. "I know saying sorry doesn't fix the years I stole from us, but I never stopped thinking about you." "Not for a single day." Maya met his gaze, torn between anger and the faint pull of something she thought she'd buried. "Why tell me this now, Ethan? After 8 years? Because I finally learned that time doesn't erase what's real," he said quietly. "I tried to move on. I even thought I did, but it was never the same. You were the one thing that never left my heart, even when everything else changed." Maya looked away, her throat tightening. The sincerity in his voice hit something deep inside her. For years, she had convinced herself that he'd stopped caring, that his silence meant indifference. But now, hearing the truth, she realized maybe it had been pain, not neglect, that kept him away. Still, the wound wasn't so easily healed. "You can't just come back and expect everything to be okay," she said. "People change, Ethan. I'm not that girl who waited by the phone anymore." "I don't expect anything," he said softly. "I just needed you to know the truth before it was too late." Her eyes narrowed. "Too late? What do you mean?" He hesitated, the wind tugging at his jacket. "I'm moving again. Overseas this time. Work transfer. I'll be gone for at least a year, maybe longer. I couldn't leave without making things right between us." Maya felt her stomach drop. "So you came here to say goodbye?" He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe to finally say what I should have said years ago." She turned away, trying to steady herself. It was almost cruel, to finally get the truth, only to have him leave again. "You really know how to make an exit, don't you?" "I'm not asking for anything," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Just a chance to leave this time without regret. To tell you what I couldn't before." Something in his tone made her pause. She turned back, her voice quieter. "Then say it." He stepped closer, his eyes meeting hers with a calm intensity that made her heart skip. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Maya, and losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. If I could rewrite it all, I would have fought harder. I would have stayed. I just needed you to know that before I go." Her breath caught. For a long moment she couldn't speak. His honesty hit her harder than she expected, not because she hadn't dreamed of hearing those words once, but because now they came when she wasn't sure what to do with them. "You think words can fix everything?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "No, but maybe they can finally heal something." Maya studied him for a moment. The man standing before her wasn't the same boy she'd fallen for all those years ago. He carried himself differently, steadier, humbler, more grounded. It made her wonder what kind of years he'd lived while she was busy pretending to forget him. After a long silence, she said softly, "You broke me, Ethan. But maybe the worst part is that I still remember the best parts of us. The laughter, the plans, the way you looked at me like I was home. I hate that those memories still make me smile." He took a step closer, his voice low. "Then let me give you one more memory to hold on to. One that doesn't hurt." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "I mean, let's spend one last day together. No questions, no regrets. Just one day to remember what we were, before time and pain got in the way." Maya hesitated. Every part of her knew she should say no. He was leaving. It made no sense to reopen something that had already ended. But the part of her that still felt that familiar warmth when he said her name, that part whispered yes. She looked at him for a long moment, then sighed softly. "Just one day?" he nodded. "Just one." "Fine," she said finally. "One day? Then we say goodbye for good." A faint smile touched his lips. "Deal." As they walked back toward the parking lot, Maya couldn't help but feel the strange flutter of emotions she hadn't felt in years. Confusion, hope, sadness, and all tangled together. She told herself it didn't mean anything, that it was just closure. But deep down, she knew it was more than that, because despite everything, despite the years, the silence, the pain, seeing Ethan again had woken something inside her. Something she thought had died the day he left. And as she glanced back at him, she saw the same realization in his eyes, that sometimes, no matter how much time passes, some connections never really fade. Tomorrow would be their last day together. But Maya had a feeling that whatever happened next would stay with her forever. The next morning, sunlight poured through Maya's curtains, catching the dust in the air like floating sparks. She hadn't slept much. Ethan's words from the night before kept circling her mind, echoing in every quiet moment. One last day together. She told herself it was just for closure, a clean goodbye. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. When she walked into the cafe at Willow Creek, Ethan was already there, sitting at their old spot by the window. The same place they used to meet after college classes, where they shared dreams of future travels and laughter over cheap coffee. Time had changed many things, but that corner still felt like theirs. He stood as soon as he saw her, his smile soft but unsure. "You came," he said, almost like he hadn't expected her to. "I said I would," Maya replied, setting her bag on the chair. "One day, remember?" He nodded, motioning for her to sit. "I remember everything." Their breakfast was quiet at first. They talked about safe things. Her work as a graphic designer, his new job overseas, the weather, anything but the years that had stretched between them. But under every word lingered what neither of them dared to say aloud. How easily they still understood each other, how familiar this silence felt. After breakfast, Ethan suggested a drive. "I have a place I want to show you," he said. Maya hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but no surprises that'll end with me crying on a highway, okay?" He laughed softly. "No promises." They drove out of town, past winding roads and golden fields that shimmered under the late summer sun. Music played quietly in the background, an old playlist Ethan had made for her years ago. She recognized every song, every lyric. Her heart twisted at the thought that he'd kept it all this time. Finally, he stopped near a hill overlooking the valley. It was the same hill where they'd once spent an evening watching fireworks years ago. "You remember this place?" he asked. Maya stepped out, looking at the vast horizon. "How could I forget? This is where you told me you'd never leave." He looked at her, guilt flickering across his face. "And I broke that promise." "I know," she didn't respond. The wind rustled her hair, and for a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the highway below. Ethan took a deep breath. "I've been chasing things that never filled the space I lost when I left. Jobs, cities, people, it all felt temporary. But being here, right now, it feels like coming home." She turned to him, her voice calm but trembling. "You can't just say things like that, Ethan. Not when you're leaving again." He looked down, his hands in his pockets. "I know, but I need you to know how much you still mean to me. I can't leave this country without saying that. Maya's eyes glistened. Why now? Why wait 8 years to say something you could have said then? He smiled faintly. Because back then I didn't know how. I thought love was about grand gestures and perfect timing. Now I know it's about honesty, even if it comes late. The simplicity of his words made her chest ache. She wanted to stay angry, to remind herself of the pain he'd caused. But the way he looked at her, steady, raw, honest, made it impossible. They sat on the grass, side by side, the silence between them warm this time. Do you ever think about what could have been? She asked quietly. Every day, he admitted, especially on the bad ones. And were there many? He laughed softly. Enough to make me realize I walked away from something irreplaceable. Maya stared at the valley below, the colors melting into gold as the afternoon sun dipped lower. It's strange, she said. I spent years trying to forget you, and now I can't stop remembering everything. He turned to her. Maybe you're not meant to forget me. She looked at him, caught between wanting to believe and wanting to protect herself. Then what am I supposed to do with that? Maybe just forgive, he said gently. Not for me. For yourself. For a long time they just sat there, the quiet stretching comfortably. Maya could feel the weight of the past, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a story finally finding its ending. As the sun dipped lower, Ethan stood. Come on, there's one more place I want to take you. They drove into town again, this time to the old bookstore they used to visit. It was small, tucked between a bakery and a flower shop. Inside, the air smelled like paper and dust, exactly as it had years ago. Maya smiled faintly. You really brought me here? Of course, he said. You used to spend hours picking books you never finished. She laughed, rolling her eyes. You used to buy them for me just so I'd stop overthinking which one to choose. He grinned. And you never read them anyway. They walked through the narrow aisles, brushing fingers across the spines of old novels. At the counter, Ethan picked up a small wrapped box and handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Just open it, he said. Inside was a worn copy of The Notebook. Her favorite book, the one she'd lost when he moved. On the inside, cover. A note in his handwriting read, Some stories don't end. They just wait for the right chapter to begin again. Maya's throat tightened. You kept this all these years? He nodded. It reminded me of you. She blinked away the tears that threatened to fall. You really think we could just start over, Ethan? After everything? He sighed. I don't know. Maybe not. But even if we can't, I want you to know that what we had, what we were, it mattered. It still does. Maya held the book close, unsure of what to say. Part of her wanted to tell him that she still loved him, that despite everything, the connection between them hadn't faded. But another part reminded her that he was leaving again, and that love alone wasn't enough to hold someone. They left the store quietly, walking under the fading light. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. As they reached her car, he turned to her. I leave tomorrow, he said softly. She nodded, keeping her gaze steady. I know. I don't expect anything, he continued. I just hope when you think of me, it's not with anger anymore. Maya's lips curved into a sad smile. I don't think I ever really was angry, just hurt. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Then maybe that means there's still something left. Her heart skipped. Don't make me believe in something you can't stay for, Ethan. He looked at her, eyes full of a kind of sadness that said everything words couldn't. Then believe that I never stopped loving you, even if that's all that stays between us. Maya felt the tears spill, but she didn't wipe them away. The streetlight above them flickered, casting soft light across their faces. For a second, it felt like time had folded, bringing them back to where it all began. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. As Ethan turned and walked away into the night, Maya stood by her car, clutching the book to her chest. She knew tomorrow he'd be gone again, but this time, the silence that would follow wouldn't be filled with anger or confusion. It would be filled with something quieter, deeper, peace. Because now she knew the truth. and somehow, that made everything feel complete. But as she looked up at the night sky, one thought lingered in her mind. Was this really the end? Or just another beginning waiting to unfold? And somewhere deep down, she already knew the answer. The next morning, the city felt different to Maya. It was quiet, soft, as if holding its breath. She woke early, unable to shake the heaviness sitting in her chest. Ethan was leaving today. The thought settled deep in her heart, pressing against memories that refused to fade. She tried to keep busy, made coffee, folded laundry, opened windows to let in the sunlight, but every small thing reminded her of him. The way he smiled when he handed her that book, the sound of his laugh at the cafe, the way his voice trembled when he said he never stopped loving her. It was strange how one day could blur 8 years of distance, bringing everything back as if time had only paused, not passed. By noon, she gave up pretending she could move on without seeing him one last time. She grabbed her keys and drove toward the train station. The road shimmered under the afternoon sun, and the sky was streaked with the faint blush of approaching fall. When she arrived, Ethan was standing on the platform with his luggage beside him. He looked tired but calm, as if he had already accepted everything. For a moment, she just watched him from a distance. The man she had once loved, the man she still wasn't sure she'd stopped loving. He saw her before she could call out. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "You came," Maya nodded, walking closer. "I figured if I didn't, I'd regret it." He chuckled softly. "Regret seems to be our theme." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it's time we change that." They stood there, the noise of the crowd surrounding them. Announcements echoing, people saying rushed goodbyes, luggage wheels clattering against the floor. Yet, somehow, in that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just them. "I thought you'd be gone already," she said. "I wanted to," he admitted. "But something told me to wait." "For what?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "For you," her breath caught. "Ethan," he shook his head gently. "Don't worry. I'm not going to ask for something impossible. I just needed to see you again, properly. No tears, no anger. Just us." She swallowed hard. "So this is really goodbye?" He smiled, but it was sad. "Goodbye for now. Life's strange, Maya. It keeps circling back to what's unfinished. Maybe one day, if it's meant to, it'll bring us back again." The train whistle echoed in the distance. People began to move. Time was slipping away too fast. Maya wanted to say something, anything that would make him stay. But words felt too small for what she felt. So instead, she asked softly, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Every day. But then I realize, if I hadn't left, maybe I wouldn't have learned how much you meant to me. Sometimes it takes losing something to understand its value." She blinked back tears. "That's a painful way to learn." "It is," he said. "But it's honest." For a moment, neither moved. The air between them was heavy, yet peaceful, like a quiet understanding had passed between their hearts. Then Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "I wanted to give you this. What is it?" He handed it to her. "A letter. I wrote it last night. You can read it after I leave." Maya took it carefully, her fingers brushing his. "Is it goodbye?" He hesitated. "It's something else. Something that's just for you." Her heart tightened. "You're not going to tell me what it says?" He smiled softly. "No. What I wrote, it's meant to stay between us. Forever." She stared at him, her eyes searching his face. "You're really not coming back, are you?" He looked away toward the approaching train. "I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I promise you this. I'll carry you with me, wherever I go." The train slowed as it pulled in, screeching gently on the tracks. The crowd shifted, voices rising. Maya's throat burned, her chest tightening. She didn't want to cry, but the ache inside her felt impossible to hold back. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to say anything, Maya. Just know that what we had, it was real. It always was." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You're not making this easy, you know." He smiled faintly, his own eyes shining. It was never supposed to be easy. It was supposed to matter. And before she could speak again, he leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. It wasn't romantic or impulsive. It was a quiet promise, a seal on all the words they couldn't say. Then he picked up his bag. "Take care of yourself, okay?" She nodded, her voice trembling. "You too." He smiled one last time, then turned and walked toward the train doors. She stood there, watching as he stepped inside, as the doors closed, as the train slowly began to move. Even after it disappeared down the tracks, she stayed there, still, quiet, holding the envelope in her hand like it was the last piece of him she had left. When she finally opened it later that evening, sitting on her porch with the sunset painting the sky, she unfolded the letter carefully. His handwriting was neat, familiar. She began to read. "Maya, if you're reading this, it means I've already left. I don't know where life will take us, but I need you to know what I couldn't say in person. You were the first person who made me believe in love that didn't need to be perfect to be real. You taught me that connection isn't about always being together. It's about knowing that no matter the distance, someone out there still feels like home. I'm not asking you to wait for me. I don't deserve that. But I do ask that you don't close your heart, because even if it's not me, you deserve the kind of love that doesn't leave you wondering. What we had wasn't a mistake. It was a lesson, a gift, and a promise. And though our paths are parting now, a part of me will always belong to you. Quietly, endlessly, faithfully. Yours always, Ethan." By the time she finished reading, tears were streaming freely down her cheeks. She pressed the letter to her chest, closing her eyes. The ache inside her didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt warm, alive, full of something deeper than sadness. The moon had risen when she finally whispered into the quiet night, "Goodbye, Ethan." But as she looked up at the stars, she realized it didn't feel like an ending. His words, his truth, had become a part of her, something no distance could erase. What he told her, what passed between them in those final moments, would never fade. It wasn't something to share or to explain. It was something to keep, quietly, tenderly, between their hearts forever. And for the first time in years, Maya smiled through her tears, not because she had lost something, but because she finally understood. Some loves aren't meant to stay. They're meant to remind you of who you are when you truly feel alive. The story didn't end in heartbreak or reunion. It ended in peace, the kind that comes when love, even from afar, leaves you stronger than before. And as the night wrapped around her, the whisper of the wind seemed to carry his voice one last time, gentle, certain, and full of everything left unsaid. Some things don't have to be spoken, Maya. They just have to be felt. She closed her eyes, and for the first time she believed him.